Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel, because in this episode I'm going to bring to proper working condition a John Brooks antique wrought iron blacksmith's anvil. Let's go and have a look. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the very first demonstration I want to give you as to why I bought this particular anvil goes like this. I can pick it up. Now I know that it weighs 189 pounds, and that's about as heavy an anvil as I want to buy, because I want it to be portable. I want to be able to pick it up off of its stand and put it on my vehicle and take it somewhere, do all that kind of thing. And that's why I bought one this size. In fact, it's a little bit oversized to what I wanted, but I saw this anvil and I've been looking for a very long time for one in this condition, and that's why I bought it. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the anvil that I bought. It's a John Brooks, so it's a named brand of anvil, known for having a super hard face on it. This is the face part of the anvil. So the first thing I want to talk about is all the different parts of the anvil. What do they do? Why are they there? And what their uses are. So this is a London pattern anvil, or English pattern or London pattern. It's got two different names. It's got a face on it which is usually in direct proportion to the weight of the anvil. So this one has a 5-inch wide face. It's about 20 inches long. If this was smaller, it would have a 4-inch face. If it was much bigger, it would have a 6-inch wide face. The face is made out of hardened steel. The body is made out of wrought iron. It has a square hole in the back called a hardy hole, and it's square for a reason. Quite often people come on, they talk about anvils and this and that, and they go, oh yeah, look, there's a hardy hole, yeah, put your hardy tools in it. But they don't say why it's square. They don't say the purpose of why it's like that. When you put a hardy tool into this, which is square, there's a square shank on it and goes in there, it's square like that so it can't turn around. If you would have a round hole and you put something on there, some hot metal, and start hitting it, that tool's going to start moving around. It's going to become really annoying. So that's deliberately why they made these square. This one has a slight chamfer on it as well. And the reason that chamfer is there is so that when you put your hardy tool in there, it locates into that hole exactly, because not all hardies are exactly the same size as your hardy hole. That chamfer helps keep it steady. Over here we have a Prickle Hole. Prickles are for punching little holes in horseshoes. That's the actual reason why that's there, and why it's on the far side of the anvil. Because when you get a horseshoe and you want to punch a hole in it, if you're a farrier, I'm not a farrier by the way, and you want to punch it, it's on the whole horseshoe can sit on there while you're punching a hole in it. If it was on this side, the near side of the anvil, your horseshoe would be falling off as you're trying to work on it, which would just get annoying, wouldn't it? So that's over there for that reason. When we move to this end of the anvil, there's a little square space on here. I've watched a lot of videos by guys talking about anvils, and nobody has ever explained what that is. They just go, they call it a step sometimes. Oh yeah, there's that step there, yeah, yeah. And then they move on to the horn. It's not a step, it's called a chipping block. And the reason this is here on a wrought iron anvil is because this is part of the original wrought iron part of it. It's not part of the hardened face, it's quite reasonably soft metal. It's for chopping off pieces of hot steel that you've just forged and you want to cut it off. You cut it off on there, bang, 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 chop it off. That's because that's soft and it's not going to ruin your chisel. You wouldn't do that on the face of your anvil, because as you go through the metal, it's just going to make a big hole in it, relative to whatever you're using. So the smith would transfer across to the chipping block, put that on there, whack, 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 chop off the piece of metal. Chipping block, that's why it's there. This anvil hasn't been used a great deal. I know that because the chipping block hasn't been damaged all that much. That was one of the first things I looked at when I decided to buy this anvil. And projecting out from that is the horn of the anvil. And the reason that these types of anvils have a horn is for making horseshoes. I just said I'm not a farrier, and a lot of village blacksmiths were blacksmiths, but they were also farriers, because they were the only one around with a forge that could actually use it to make a horseshoe and put it onto a horse's foot. And that's why the London pattern anvil generally comes out with it. Now you know this because when you see an armourer's anvil, they're making knives, swords, axes, all that kind of war weapons, all that kind of thing. They don't have a horn on it. They just have a face like that and they're just whacking away on it. They don't have a hardy hole either, usually. So the reason they don't have a horn is because they're not making horseshoes. So this is a general engineering piece of equipment the blacksmiths can use to make almost anything. And that's why that's there, because it has the added advantage of being able to shoe a horse. Now I knew this was a wrought iron anvil when I first spotted it, because in here and in here there's two square holes. We'll have a look at them in a minute. That's because the people that manufactured this anvil at John Brooks get a great big pair of like tongs that go in there and they can pick it up and they can move it around. And then eventually, once they've welded it all on, they've welded these feet on, that one was welded on, this foot here was welded on, this horn was welded onto the body of the anvil, and then lastly, but not leastly, they will put the face on. So this was brought up to welding temperature, so was the body. It was placed on top, and then under an enormous power hammer, it was put on. One whack and it's welded. And then after that, the hardy hole was punched out and the Prickle hole was punched out, and that's how they used to manufacture them. Any anvil maker who puts his name on an anvil, like John Brooks does, Peter Wright, all those kinds of anvil makers, they do this because it's like a guarantee of quality. Inferior anvil makers who made lesser quality anvils wouldn't put their name on it because they didn't want everybody to know that their anvils were absolute rubbish. So, because it's a name brand, that was the second thing I looked at. I looked on the side, I gave it a little rub like that, I saw it said John Brooks Stourbridge. As soon as I saw that, I knew this was a name brand anvil. It was very good quality. It hadn't been used very much. There's a couple of little chips out of the face along the edge, along here. The horn was in good condition. The chipping block had next to no damage on it, so I knew they hadn't been cutting on it very much. And then I looked at the general weight of the anvil. On the near side, we'll have a look at it in a minute, there's some numbers on here. All anvils, quality anvils anyway, were weighed, and people would buy them in their weight class. So this is a bit big. A lot of people use 125 pound anvils, so you typically find them on farms, stuff like that, where people are a little bit remote and they wanted to make their own stuff. They buy a little forge and they have a small anvil so they could do small jobs. But this is a little bit beyond that sort of a class of anvil. It's much bigger. And then you would go up to an even bigger class, around 350 to 500 pound. They were very, very large anvils, and they would have been found in an engineering blacksmith's workshop. Even village blacksmiths wouldn't use one that big. This is ideal for me. As I demonstrated in the very first part of this video, I can actually pick this up and move it around. I don't want anything bigger than this. I used to have a 350 pounder, but I've since sold that and that's gone on. I'm not using that one anymore. So what I'm going to do now, we're going to have a bit of a close-up look around it and show you some of those features that were that I spoke about before. You can see on there, I hope, that says John Brooks Stourbridge, and someone's put their initial on it, JW it looks like. You can see that this has been very nicely made out of wrought iron. You can see all the dints and dings and all the tiny little cavities in it. You can see along that plane there that the face of the anvil has been welded on. And when we look down here near the feet, you can see like what appears to be a crack, like two crack marks. They're not cracks actually. What they are is the edge of the weld that was put on there. And down here you can see some marks. That's where a previous smith that had worked with this anvil, maybe it was that JW guy, I don't know, has tested his chisel in there to see whether it's hard enough. It's gone into the soft wrought iron. That's why they used to do it. The horn is in pretty good condition. And when we come around this side, this is on the far side of the anvil. Correction, it's on the near side of the anvil, as I would use it. There's some numbers on here. And they are the numbers 1, 2, and what appears to be 21. So the numbers on your anvil indicate, the left hand number indicates centre weight, which is 112 pounds. The middle one are quarters, which are 28 pounds. And that far side number there is individual pounds. And that's how you calculate the weight of your anvil. Okay, that was a very quick whip around of the anvil there. As I just said, this piece of wrought iron and steel, it's an engineering piece of equipment. It's not for display purposes, it's not for keeping like some kind of an old antique where you don't want to remove the patina because it somehow ruins it or lessens the value of it or anything like that. There are hundreds of thousands of these things around the world, and they were used daily by people who needed to have this piece of equipment to produce the things that made our life a lot better. So to that end, I'm not afraid to start hacking into this anvil to get it into the condition that I want so I can start forging on it. Because if it's damaged in some way, well, that's useless to me, because every time I put a piece of hot metal on here and smack it with a hammer, it's going to leave a reverse impression of whatever this anvil face looks like, or the horn for that matter. And so this face needs to be flat. It needs to be flattened off. I had an anvil years ago that I actually took to an engineering company and had a milling machine go across and actually mill it perfectly flat. And after that I hit it with a belt sander to take the milling marks out of it, and that was absolutely dead flat, like a piece of engineering equipment should be. I went all around the edge and I treated my edges so that they were nice and square, like that. And then up at the front here, where I normally do quite a bit of my forging, I put a 1/2 inch radius on that edge there for about 1.5 inches, something like that. And then I reduced that to a 1/4 inch radius back further to that, and the rest of it was absolutely square, because I would use this edge, the far edge, and this edge, the near edge, for my forgings when I wanted to have that radius in my work. And that saved me having to continuously replace the hardies of different sizes and different shapes. I could quickly whip them out on here. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take a known straight edge, which is this measuring tool here, and I'm going to put it on the face like that. And then I'm going to look down and I'm going to see if there's a bit of a crack there. And then what I'm going to do is take a marker and I'm going to mark the high spots on my anvil. So where this is touching, I'll make a little mark. I'll bring it back just a tiny bit, make another mark, keep making those marks all the way across my anvil this way. Then it's just as important to have it flat, not just in this plane, but in that plane as well. It's no good if it's sloping this way or it's got a belly that way, as long as it's flat this way. So I'm going to go along like that, all the way along, marking as I go, all the way along. When I'm finished doing that, what I'm going to see is like little raised areas that have been marked by my pen. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grind off those parts and bring all those high spots down until I can go along with this and it appears to be flat. Now I'll go along that way and I'll do the same thing. While I'm about it, I'll grind the horn down if there's any big lumps out of the horn, because you do use the horn for shaping, much like the farriers doing their horseshoes. You use this for shaping, usually round things like that, which complies with that sort of shape. And you don't want to have in your horn any missing bits, chunks. I mean, when they came from the manufacturer, they were, well, it's wrought iron, and they were bashed out on very, very big machines, and they weren't perfect. Let's say it like that. It's like any tool, a shaping tool that you would get today. If you go to the shop and buy a chisel, it's not in working condition. You've still got to sharpen it first before you can start using it. And anvils are no different. They're a tool that you can use to do your blacksmithing work, but they're not always perfect. But it's up to you, the blacksmith, to redo your tools, make this tool do what it is that you want it to do. So to that end, I'm going to mark it now, and then I'm going to start grinding it off. Alright, I've just put my eyeballs on. Got my little pen there, that's just a pen you buy from the shop. It's nothing special, it's not a special marking pen or anything. Right, I put my straight edge, my known straight edge, across my anvil like that. And I start to mark the high points, which I can see is about here. And it's high from about there. Move him across a little bit, not very far. about 10 mil or 3/8 of an inch, just go across like that. Have another look, still high there, and it's high all the way along there. Go again, yep, high there, high a bit there, high a bit there. Continuing along we go. All right. Okay, so you can see there that the front and the back of the anvil, I've got my marks on that I put on to indicate the high spots. And one thing you'll notice is there's nothing in the middle. Okay, so there you go. I just showed you the high point, which is around about here, and the other high point, which is at the front here. So why isn't there a high point in the centre of the anvil? And that's because of the forgings that were done on here. So, as I said before, all this part is all wrought iron. Now, wrought iron's reasonably soft compared to the hardened steel face. So if you're pounding on this anvil with a sledgehammer particularly, boom, 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 and you've been doing that for a number of years, it's going to end up with a belly in it, like that, or a saddle as some people call it, like that. That's why this area is quite high, and the area around the hardy and the Prickle Hole is quite high. It's sunk in the middle like that. Also, by checking it, I've also found that the outside face is a bit saggy, and the inside face is a little bit saggy down there. So it's dropping off like that, and that's because when people were hammering on it, doing smaller work, they were hammering on the far side of the anvil like that, in this area down here. And on the near side, and this happens quite a lot, if you watch blacksmithing videos, you'll see people using the edges of their anvils like this, over here and over there. And over time, many, many years probably, I mean this anvil could be well over 100 years old, I don't know. There's no manufacturer's date, they never put a date on them. They just put their name, if it's a named brand, they'll put their name on that side. On the near side over here, they'll put the weight, that's it. So all I have to do now is to grind down this little front area here and this little back area down here to get this anvil flat. Now, here's a little thing that I'm going to do. I very rarely use this area of the anvil for general forging. Sometimes if I've got something that's quite long and I want to flatten it, I'll use the entire face of the anvil like that to make it flat. This is why you need to take that belly out, because if you were to leave that belly in and you forged it, it would be bent like that. If you then pick that up and want to forge the other side, it's going to be like that. And when you hit it, it's going to go like that. And then you're going to flip it over and you're going to be back to there again. You're just going to be chasing your tail. You're going to be back and forth, back and forth. It's going to start to get frustrating. This is why this must be as flat as you can make it to within a small tolerance. You don't have to go bonkers. But this is also why I'm not necessarily going to treat this area very heavily, because the hardy tools go in here, and because you've got the hardy hole and that Prickle Hole there, you're not tending to forge around here a lot. There's not a lot of hammering going on up there. It's normally inside this part of the waist of the thing, so the waist here. You're normally, if you're doing heavy forgings with a sledgehammer, it would normally be inside that waist area, so around about here. This is why it's gone flat. If you're doing light forgings, you're generally speaking using this forward edge up in this area. Or if you're shaping, of course, you're going to be doing it on the horn. That's why the belly's gone. That's why I need to flatten this area here particularly, so that I can use the area forward of the hardy hole up to the chipping block to flatten things out. It's very rare that you'll be flattening anything longer than that. That's about 10 inches or 250 mil. Very rare you're going to be flattening anything longer than that. So this is the area that I'm going to be primarily concerned with, in this area here. And I'm going to flatten it. I'm going to grind that down first with a grinder. And then I'm going to hit it with like one of those little flat disc polishing wheel things. I'm going to polish it up. I'll do the whole anvil face with that, and I'll work around here a little bit. And I'll keep doing that. I'll keep measuring it. I'll keep marking it until I've got it where I want it, which is flat. Once it's flat, I'm going to put my radius on here. I'm going to put my radius on here. I'll give the horn a bit of a clean up. I don't have to worry about the chipping block. Don't worry about that at all. And then just give it a general makeover, a little bit of a freshen up. And then I'll be ready to forge on. Wacko the diddle-o, can't wait for that. Woohoo, get the forge going, start smashing stuff. Earmuffs. Let's go. Alright, now I've done a little bit of grinding on it. I've done a bit of grinding on the front of the face here, and I've done a bit of grinding down by the hardy hole, Prickle Hole area. But I'm not going to go too wild. This needs to be done in very small increments, otherwise you could go too far and end up going the wrong way. So I'll get my little straight edge back and just have a bit of a look, see how I'm going. Still got a little bit of a belly in it. Not too bad that way. In fact, that's pretty good that way actually. All that way in this plane here like that, it's actually pretty flat all the way down. Except for just on the edges, as I previously mentioned, they're tapering off a tiny bit. Now I don't mind that all that much actually, because over here I'm going to have a radius anyway. I'm going to be grinding that edge off, you know, back for about 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch, and then it will be, you know, reasonably sort of 90 degrees right here. So I'm not really concerned about that. The only thing I'm concerned about now is there's still a tiny little belly in the center like that. So that's okay. Back to the grinding. I don't really have to remark it because I can already tell that the shiny bits are the bits that I need to bring down. Predominantly up the front here. So it's back to grinding. Okay, so I've given it a good rub down all over, just to take the surface rust off of it. I've taken to the face of this anvil. It's not completely perfectly flat like you would get with a milling machine, and there are some surface imperfections on here. And the reason I'm not going to take all this down today is because I may very well start forging on this anvil, and it might be perfectly okay like that. And if it is, I'm okay with leaving those little imperfections there. I've made about a 1/2 inch radius from there to there. I've made about a 1/4 inch radius from here to here. And there I've tried to kind of square it off a little bit. I've done the same thing on the near side of the anvil. 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, reasonably flat. It's not perfect, but it'll do me to get started on. And if I don't like it later on, or I want more radius, I'll put more on. The main thing is you can't really take it off. Well, you can if you weld it all back on again with hard face welding. And I'm not going to repair these little dings here straight away for 2 reasons. First of all, I haven't got the time to do it in time to put this video on the internet. And the second reason is I sold my stick welder a few years back, and I've got to go and buy another one and buy some hard face rods so I can do that job. But I can get forging with that, that's fine. I'm reasonably happy with the general shape of the anvil now and the surface treatments that I've given it. So all I've got to really do now is I'm just going to put a bit of Cabinetmakers Wax on there. I put that on all my tools, you know, chisels, hammers, all that kind of thing, including this anvil and the post vise I'm going to do up. And I'm going to put that on there now, and it just stops a little bit of rusting, just stops the oxidation. It's just like a barrier, if you like, to rust. I don't mind things being a little bit rusty, but I don't like them overly rusty, looking like they're falling to bits. So I'm just going to put that on there now, put it on with a rag, just give it a wipe all over, and then we're pretty much ready to go for this anvil. Just got some Cabinetmakers Wax. It's made by Gilly Stevenson. It's a local West Australian product. Nothing flash or fancy. It's just wax. Smells really nice. Smells like antique furniture, that's why I really like it. Yum, 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 yum. All over like that. It'll all be over in a minute, little anvil, it's all right. Put him on, there you go. Done! There you go. That wasn't so bad, was it? No, that's all right. Give him a little polish up like that. And there you go. So my anvil is now more or less ready to put into service. I can get forging on it. I'm happy with the of it, happy with everything. I'm not going to wax this working surface here. I'm not going to wax the top of the horn, because when you're forging hot metal on it, it ends up kind of grey and shiny anyway, from the constant rubbing of the hot metal and the hammering and all that kind of thing. Here's me rubbing it with a rag. What was I thinking? So there you go, we are ready to get going. Beautiful. That'll do me. Now, in the future, I may do some extra works on it. This is just a preliminary preparing of this anvil to put it into service and get it going. Other things are, I made this wooden stand for it. I made the wooden stand out of bits of old pallet wood that I had lying around. It's not a real good stand, but it does the job. And that's one of the things I want to say. You don't have to wait around and procrastinate until you get something perfect. If you want to start forging, you want to start doing blacksmithing, start now. Get something, anything, and get going. And you can always upgrade later on, like I did. So I started with nothing. I started with a 2-pound cross-peen engineer's hammer. That was the very first tool that I bought to do blacksmithing with when I learnt with this blacksmithing group. Because I asked them, I said, what do you need? Do I have to buy an anvil, or do I need to get a forge? And they said, no. Just turn up with a 2-pound engineer's hammer and we'll get you started straight away. Now that was great, because it meant I didn't procrastinate, I didn't think too much about it. I just bought the little hammer from a hardware store, went down to the forge where they were forging to learn how to do it, and I just started learning. And then I just kept building my knowledge, building up my tools, eventually bought anvils, and I made a whole workshop full of the tools that you have to make, you know, tongs and hardy tools and all that kind of thing. So I'll be covering that in future videos, by the way, tool making. But this anvil is ready to go. Thanks for watching my video. I hope you got something out of it. I hope some of the anvil lovers out there aren't going to hate me for putting that radius on there. Just remember, if you do buy an anvil and you bring it home and you want to get it put into service and you want to start working with it, it's your anvil and you can do whatever you want to it. This anvil's not ruined. I mean, there's big chips out of there. That to me is an abomination. What I've done here is an extra little engineering area that I can use, much like you'd use the horn or the square edge of your anvil. So it hasn't ruined it. In fact, I think it's enhanced it a little bit. I did this to both of the anvils that I had before. Works perfect. I'll be showing that in future videos. And so, there we are. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you on another video one day when we're actually forging something on this and using it for its intended purpose, rather than seeing it just sitting around as an ornament somewhere. Thanks for watching. See you later.